welcome everybody.
Hello.
Yet another virtual gathering. Is anybody sick of these yet, by any chance?
I think we're gonna have a lot of these, so I
think
get used to them.
Just getting started.
Yeah.
But what I'm find very odd is I love the fact that there are so many of the offline cons going virtual, and they have a brand and they have a community. But there are some of these that have never done a con and they're jumping on the bandwagon and they're doing their own cons like Corona Con and Virus Con and stuff. And I personally am like, I think you're trying to exploit a system, but that's just me.
Yeah,
I would
I have-
agree with that. I thought though that Pancakes Con, I think if they've got like a good angle, I'm
Mhm.
okay with it. So like Pancakes Con, where you had to give a talk about something cybersecurity and something not.
I thought she did a phenomenal job. Yeah, that's great.
Agreed.
Yeah, yeah. No, there's one or two people who are doing Corona Con, and I
yeah. I
Sorry.
mean, I don't begrudge anybody for doing anything. That's fine. I'm not. I can't keep track of all of them. But yeah, things like Pancakes Con was just a feat of modern engineering,
Mhm.
both mental and technological. Because one day Leslie's like, "I need to do something, so let's do this in 4 days," and did a CFP, and put it together and got moderators and Black Hills helped him with infrastructure and. Dude, it was awesome.
Mhm.
I spoke at Pancakes Con honorably enough, and I remember I saw the tweet and I was like, I gotta get in on this, and I was literally making mac and cheese in my kitchen, looking just pathetic as a 40-year-old man can. And I came up with the idea and I wrote the abstract in the kitchen before the noodles were even done, and
Cool.
yeah, then it got accepted, and I was like, this is awesome. But yeah, it's a weird reality. I've been doing it just to stay sane and doing as many of these as I possibly can. Before we dive too much into that, I want to introduce everybody. Not that anybody here needs introductions, but I'm going to do it anyway. So we have Mr. Mike Murray. How are you, sir?
Good. Glad to be here again. Love doing this, and I love this format.
I
So
love when you come on, man. You're just one of my favorite. All of you are just some of my favorite humans in the entire world.
man, look at this group. I just consider myself lucky to get to sit here with all my favorite people. Like, this is so cool.
Right. So, Mr. Mike Murray, you run a healthcare-related startup. Remind me of the name of that again.
Scope Security.
Scope Security.
We're small, and this is a really interesting time to be in healthcare cybersecurity.
Dude, I didn't even think about
Yeah.
that.
Certainly didn't call this. Certainly didn't. When we were pitching investors originally, we weren't pitching like, "Hey, there's going to be a global pandemic," but it kind of worked out. It's an interesting time to be doing what we're doing.
I can't wait to have you back on when all this blows over and get some of your lessons learned. And oh my god,
man, yeah, it's going to be interesting. It's going to be fascinating.
So,
But
couldn't have predicted it.
he's doing the lessons learned at Higher Ground first.
Done. Yes, exactly.
which leads me right to Miss Kathleen Smith. Yes, it's Kathleen on Twitter. Hi, Kathleen.
Hi everyone.
Tell everybody what you do.
So I'm the Chief Outreach Officer for two job boards, one called cybersecjobs.com, the other clearedjobs.net. We run job boards and job fairs, but most importantly, people know me as the person in the B-Sides community that runs most of the career tracks, most notably Higher Ground at B-Sides Las Vegas, most recently the Career Village at B-Sides San Francisco, B-Sides Tampa, B-Sides Charm, B-Sides Nova, B-Sides San Antonio, and I'm going to be doing B-Sides Augusta in the fall, possibly B-Sides DC, and then there's this other very large con in Vegas after B-Sides
that one?
I've asked to
I've-
run
I've-
their career village. So
I haven't heard of that one before.
Shh, we need to be really quiet about that right now.
Yes, I love Kathleen. I've wanted to get her on my little slice of the internet for so long, mostly because I'm an idiot and I can't count how many times I've literally passed right by her at conferences and not said hello and
Yes.
been in the same circle. And I've
You
like,
were right next to me at B-Sides Augusta for an entire 8 hours, and I kept waving at you, and you were like, nee.
that. Well, in my defense, I was pretty drunk. But
In Augusta?
oh, we got our whole team goes for Augusta. Augusta is hot stuff. We rented this like southern mansion and our whole team goes
You
down.
need to in Augusta.
Dude, oh my God, it's awesome. But yes, it is not out of hubris. It is not out of ego. I'm just stupid and I am sorry and I always feel bad. But that's why I was like, Kathleen, please
You're
come
okay.
on.
You're okay.
And right below Kathleen, we have my good friend Joe. He is at Pyro Joe on Twitter. What's up, man?
How's it going?
Good. This was actually Joe's idea. To talk about what it's like to. Should we even be looking for jobs? How do you interview? All virtual. Like people used to freak out by just doing a little virtual, and now it's all virtual. So Joe was like, "Yo, let's talk about that." I thought,
And
Joe,
how do you hire with this too? I mean, it's
how do you hire? You know, so he brought. I was like, "Yo, let's do a stream about it." And he's always down to come on. So this was his brainchild for this episode.
Thank you, Joe.
And right next to Joe, one of the most dapper, charming, imposing presences that I've ever come across in the industry itself. He's just a pleasure to see him walk around a conference. Wolfgang, how are you, sir?
I am good. Am I the only one who's like looking around wondering who you're talking about in that intro?
Oh, stop. You stop. You know you're marvelous.
It is great to be here. Joe, thanks for the idea. And Kathleen, besides SF, San Fran, that was a blast. I had so much fun working on your hiring group and giving mentorship. So that was such a good time.
It's a lot of fun. I know that there are many different people who do different versions of the career villages in the community, and I definitely have a very specific philosophy, and that's only from being in recruitment marketing for 20 years. And I applaud everyone who's doing some kind of career help, career support. But it is interesting that we find a lot of people go to their buddies for career mentoring, or that we go to their buddies for resume review. And I think that's great to get support, but I don't think you're really getting a lot of constructive criticism, because we'll always agree with each other, or we'll always try to support each other, rather than someone who will call someone out and say, you do realize that this resume doesn't speak truly to your skills, or you're not pushing yourself out of your comfort zone and trying something new. So, you're great and you do all kinds of lovely things, but I've loved when I was like at Circle City Con the first time I met Wolf, is that there were so many people who had a specific skill set that they were not sharing in their resume. And I would ask someone to walk me through their resume, and they said, well, I do this and I do this. And then they would share something else, and you would watch them light up. And then I'd watch them light up again and again. And I would say, okay, let's take this segment that you light up about, and why aren't you talking about that more in your resume? And why aren't you doing that as your job? And people are like, I don't know. And I'm like, it's what makes you happy. Why aren't you writing about it? Why aren't you finding jobs that you can do that for?
Before we get too deep, something like this can go on for hours. And I'm going to do several of these over the next, 6 years that we're in isolation. Wolf, tell the people what you do. You don't have to say where you're at if you don't want to, but what do you do, man?
Sure. I am an advisory CISO with Duo, which is a Cisco company. So by day, I'm looking at, identity access management, zero trust, passwordless. If you follow me on Twitter, you'll see like every day I'm like, kill the password, kill the no right, kill the password. And then I also do YouTube videos.
In your car?
which
Well,
are
not in your
5
car
minutes on
anymore,
Step
but
Studio. Pardon me?
I said you were in your car for the longest time, but
Yes.
Probably
now
not
that
now.
I'm stuck at home, they are from my lovely, boring home office.
this stupid virus not only took freedom from us, it also took your ability to do your How dare that? Like,
I know. So I thought about like going and sitting in my car, like just turning it on to like feel. But the thing is, and this stays between just us on this call and anyone who's listening,
No.
is my car was in the repair shop before the pandemic hit. So I've been without a car for like 5 weeks. So I
Oh,
can't even do that. My
Oh.
home studio is gone.
mine made it out of the
no.
repair shop like 2 days before
Whew.
lockdown went in.
Good. I'm glad to hear it, man.
So
I,
let's.
I got my hair done right before lockdown. So
Mine
that
too.
was critical.
Me too.
I got mine cut. I got my
Critical.
son's cut. But if it goes on to, and luckily my hairstylist is I have a stylist. Is a good friend, so I can maybe convince her to put on a hazmat suit and come take care of us if we need it. But so let's start this off. I'm going to start with Joe because this was Joe's brainchild. What kind of popped in your head about like why like you wanted to talk about this?
So I think it's a kind of an interesting time. A lot of companies are not used to working from home, much less trying to recruit from home. And kind of one of my interview experiences in particular, I was literally the first person they tried to interview remote. And then 2 others, I watched them scramble to try and build a remote loop and figure out how to adapt their loop. So I wasn't necessarily the first person they tried this with. I was the first, but one of the 2 basically scrambled to get as much of the on-site as they could done before lockdown hit. And the other essentially after lockdown, before shelter in place, essentially made most of the loop online, except they brought me on site for the whiteboard part of the interview, except it was one other person on site with me, so full social distancing, Purell everywhere. So it's been kind of interesting to kind of see how different places are approaching this, how they're dealing with it, how they're not dealing with it. Kind of for some of the big 4, they didn't even really flinch. Like they're so used to doing teleconferencing, they kind of just spun loops up and then it's like, okay, it's remote. We've got our chosen teleconferencing solution. We'll figure it out. But even then, you get to the mechanics of it. You get to things that normally would be a whiteboard interview. You have a whiteboard and stuff just starts going sideways. Like the interview is not actually geared toward the fact that someone is typing into a text editor. So it's been interesting. It's been different. And looking at this from the same side as also someone who does interviewing, who does hiring, and thinking about, okay, how would I address this? How would I change parts of my loop to be able to handle this? So,
yeah. And we have somebody joining us. Hi, Sav. I'm actually doing my other podcast now. The DEF CON 610 one was over already, but you can hang out if you want to.
Oh, what did I just jump onto?
So
trouble.
this is how you know that I've been streaming far too much. So I have a DEF CON group, DEF CON 610 here in Easton, Pennsylvania. And we did our first virtual meetup this evening. And I used this Zoom to hang out. We did it from like 5 to 7, and then I kicked everybody off to do this. And this is Sav.
Sorry, I had night class from 4 to 7, so I was like, oh, I should go see my friends.
No, absolutely no. Like, I think they're spinning another one up. You can hang out with us. We're talking about finding a gig in a virus economy.
Ooh.
It's a good way to meet new friends, right? Just show up to random streams and
Yep.
say hello.
She's so cool. She's one of my favorite people that come to our meetup. Her family owns a local restaurant right down the street from where we meet called Daddy's Place. It's Lebanese food.
Yep, Lebanese food.
Yeah, it's delicious, and her and her family are a core part of Easton here. So, and she's just incredibly sweet and smart and lights up
I
a
would
room.
hope you guys book a gig at the restaurant once we can actually.
Yeah, once we can actually come back.
Yeah.
Actually gather. Can you hire somebody to play music if it's just takeout?
I don't.
You
Probably
could.
not, because that would break the 10-person rule, depending.
Well, what if
Over
you
Zoom,
stream it?
maybe. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, I mean, there's been lots of people who've broadcast cooking classes or making cocktails. I actually had several of the wineries from Sonoma say they were going to do virtual wine tasting, and they'll
Oh.
ship you out the wine ahead of time, and then you could be tasting it. So,
So
Yeah,
just be
well,
creative.
yeah,
Turnbull's
same-
doing that tomorrow night. Turnbull's winemaker is tasting a bottle of their 2014 Black Label and doing exactly that.
Well, you
and,
should check out Thomas Fogarty, because Thomas Fogarty is in the Santa Cruz Mountains right outside of Stanford.
Mhm.
And he is the guy that created the heart stent.
Really?
and that-
Yeah. In 1971, I think. I'll send you a link to it.
Please.
So,
This could turn into a wine podcast.
Yeah,
really
because-
fast. You got Kathleen and I here.
I gotta say, I'm
Guys,
really
thanks for
kicking
letting me
myself for not
craft
having
your
any wine right now.
podcast.
oh, okay. You can stick around if you
You're
want to. I'm not gonna
It was
keep
nice
going.
meeting you, though.
Nice meeting you.
yeah.
Nice meeting you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
That was awesome. I'm never gonna let her forget that. So that's cool. Some of my DEF CON
Yeah,
group.
but hey, bet on you not having separate links for different podcasts.
Yeah.
Listen, I pay.
Sorry.
Yeah, come
It's
on.
fine. It's whatever. It's well, the
It's
way the
happy
Zoom.
accident.
Seriously, though, like streaking on Zoom isn't the new hotness.
Zoom
You get on
bomb.
Zoom, they do all sorts of craziness.
Now I'm looking. Yeah, and now people try
or
to.
Joe, maybe you should.
Oh God, do I have my Zoom? Okay, good. It's not showing for a second. So there was a thing.
Do you have your shorts showing?
No. I'm actually wearing pants right now for once. No. So there.
Jams?
Yeah, there was a thing. Boris Johnson had a virtual Zoom meeting for Parliament, and he left his Zoom ID visible on the screen, and all of Parliament's usernames. Okay, bro.
Ooh.
Maybe somebody should have been looking out for that now. So now now I have to freak out and think about: am I showing my Zoom link isn't showing? I don't know why Boris's was showing up, but mine's not. Anyway,
We've been working on that right now because it's endemic in healthcare, because suddenly every 75-year-old doctor in the world has been told, go download an app and talk to your patients remotely. And yeah, it's the rise of telemedicine unprepared. It's incredible.
yeah, and apparently there are new Zoom vulns today, including leaking NTLM hashes, which is also always.
Oh, I didn't see that one. That's
Yeah, I didn't know about it either. I knew about the Facebook thing that they got rid of, but
Yeah,
yeah.
today was local EOP to a system on Mac and Windows.
And-
Lovely.
And you know what? I am willing to give them benefit of. So right now they are experiencing probably unparalleled growth that they never could have imagined. Because it's just been the default thing: Zoom, Zoom, Zoom. And I want them for this to be a stress test, and I want them to figure it out and get rid. I hope maybe they would have never have known this had we not have done this, and that's fine.
Yep.
But please don't screw up your goodwill. I don't want to come back 6 months from now and see 6 billion accounts breached. So please, just do. Yeah. There's somebody in the chat. Ochi1 says it's sad. It's not really Zoom's fault for NTLM issues. It's because the PCs are still using it. But yeah. Anyway, maybe those people are looking for a new job and they can watch the stream. That's awesome. So I'll pose this question to the entire group. What would you say? Like, I actually had a friend of mine who got a new job, got the offer, signed the offer, and wasn't expected to start until well into the quarantine was starting, and he decided not to do it. And it was a jump in responsibility. It would be a really good gig. It solved the problems that he was getting ready to leave for, and he didn't go. He said, I can't do this right now. Are we supposed to freeze our careers right now? Is it too uncertain, or do we still trying to keep moving forward as long as like you can mitigate your own risks?
I think we're all. I'm watching everybody. We're all shaking our head no. Like,
Yeah.
I'm watching.
Yeah.
Hanging Kathleen, and there's a lot of this right now.
You have to be more cautious. You have to pay more attention to who you're applying to.
Yeah, oh, sorry, Joe. Go ahead.
Some places are actually hitting hiring freezes. Some places are actually rescinding offers. My wife had been trying to recruit someone. He basically ducked in just under the hiring freeze. Technically, he accepted after the hiring freeze, and they wanted him enough. They said fine and waived it, but like he was getting very close to losing his offer with a hiring freeze. I know for me, the place I'm actually going, the hiring manager has been essentially sending me reminders of here's this new contract we got, here's how much runway we know we have, your job is still waiting for you. So if you're not going to like Fang or Microsoft, like there's risk, and you need to know if your employer is actually going to be stable enough to like where you're looking. Like, yeah, it might sound great, it might be the role you want, but they might not currently be fiscally solvent enough or think they will be in the next 3 to 6 months to actually follow through after an interview or even an offer exception. So like I saw a link a little bit back about the places that were not just freezing hiring, but it started rescinding offers, and it was a surprising number of places. So
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's a lot of those going out, but I would like to say that there's an equal number of people who are ramping up hiring. I've in the last week have spoken to at least 20 to 30 different recruiters who are still hiring. They are adapting very quickly, and we're talking government contractors to large financial institutions who are doing cybersecurity, that they're changing their mindset. I think that in this time, people either freeze, literally, like go into lockdown mode personally, emotionally, and physically, and others who are freed by, look, let's solve the problem, let's create a solution. And I've watched government contractors and other large institutions pivot very quickly into, okay, we're now going to do virtual interviewing, we're going to do virtual screening, we're going to do virtual onboarding, and we're going to ship computers to people who don't have them, and we're going to do the whole training process online. And I think that as long as you are, as a candidate, a lot of good points, Joe. Is this company going to be physically solvent within the next 3 to 6 months? But if you feel comfortable with that, the fact that you and your new employer are venturing into this new unknown together, I think it's sort of exciting to be able to say, we all have the freedom to say, look, this is what I need. These are my boundaries. What are your boundaries? What do you need? Because I'm watching a lot of employers say, okay, this is unknown, but if you as a candidate are willing to be a leader and say, hey, did you think about this, this, and this? You're forging a new a new relationship with your employer that you've never had before in sort of a new environment. And if you can take that leap, and if you feel safe from a financial standpoint, I think go for it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd say building off of that, there are a lot of people hiring. I found out about this website called LayUp. I don't know if anyone's heard about this. It's LayUp with 2 P's, which was recently launched by a gentleman who wants to promote work from home. People were hiring during this time. I found out about it from a good friend of mine named Tom Wilk. So if you're looking, go to that website, check it out. There's lots of jobs available. But I will say this, and this is something I had to learn the hard way, is that whenever these things happen, especially if your hair is a little bit as gray as mine, your first gut instinct is, wait a minute, things might not be safe. I better start job searching. And I would say if you have a good job, talk with your manager and make sure, how is your company doing everything? It might not be the good time to jump ship, even though a lot of us who's been in this and been through these cycles a few times, that's oftentimes our first gut instinct, right? Who's hiring a CISO? Quick, hire Wolf. Wait a minute, let me breathe. My company's doing okay.
I think you. Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead, Mike. Go ahead, Mike.
Okay, so I was just gonna say, I think that I said this on Twitter the other day in one of the first long Twitter threads I've ever posted on anything. But the idea of making decisions when in amygdala hijack is never a good thing. right? And we're all, at least some amount of our brains are in chaos and in trauma physiology right now. And so what I did internally to Scope, and we're a very different thing because we're 6 people, we're tiny. We said, we're not going to make any key strategic decisions in the next 2 weeks. Now, that was a week and a half ago. So talk to me on Monday. But the idea of like, I don't think you should press pause on your career or press pause on your hiring for 6 months. But there's the other side of it of making a decision when you're white knuckling the chair just to stay upright it never leads to the best thinking. So there's a middle ground, right?
Yeah, I think that there's, as I was sharing with Rando, I've started a recruiter series. I'm going to do 3 parts. I did one last week on Friday with Kirsten Renner and Matt Duran, one who's a cleared recruiter and one who's a commercial recruiter, and just sort of what should be going on right now, what you should be thinking about as a candidate. You've got to learn how to do video interviews, which means that you have to learn how to, verbalize a lot better than you used to. You also have to be better as far as writing is concerned, because writing and presenting on video is the only way you're going to be getting your point across, and you can't convey body language. So you have to learn how to really work on that. You also have to, if you're at home in a small apartment with your 3 kids, you have to learn how to set boundaries and say, sorry, I need to have this hour where you're not screaming or needing my attention because I need to focus on the interview. But some of the key things that happen in a career search really still happen, which when we've done our surveys over the last 2 years, people still don't do. They don't research what the next step is in their career. They leave that up to the recruiter or their buddies or something like that. So, now is a great time to do a lot of research on what do you want to do next in your career, or do you really want to get that next certification? And it's also the time to research the companies that you would be interested in, because anytime I do a presentation, I ask someone, I say, what are the top 5 companies that you want to go work for? And I hear,
Hey.
Scope, Duo, that's it.
Yeah. So the other survey we did was on community volunteering, and you can still do community volunteering online. I mean, 90% of the volunteering to prep for the cons is all online. It's, coordination, communication, it's project management, it's leadership. And these are all the skills that employers are looking for, but we don't share it with them when we're in interviews. So talk about being a goon, talk about, reviewing the CFP, talk about that, show that you're a problem solver, you take initiative, you manage people in your spare time. So sorry, I'm grabbing the screens.
No, it's
Take it
okay.
away,
Oh, it's
guys.
good.
I wanted to touch on a couple things. The first one was about interviewees communicating. And it's definitely make sure you're over communicating even more so than what the advice normally is for even an in-person interview. Just heavily over communicate. Second one, realize again, there's no body language cues, but that brings me to the next bit, which is realize that goes both ways. So one of the loops I had, someone went out of their way to ask an overly ambiguous question as a coding question, and then refused to clarify. And it was, what if you're not a game dev is a life critical system. So if you're from a systems engineering background, you're going to go into about 12 different rat holes at once. And you can keep trying to bring it back, but trying to be overly ambiguous in certain types of questions with a remote interview is not fair to your candidates. It's meaning you're leaving good talent on the table. It's so again, as you're an interviewer, also keep in mind, what are you trying to validate? What are you looking for? And like at least in Seattle, hiring software engineers, not just InfoSec, but full software engineers is kind of hard right now. Like,
Mhm, mhm.
don't. So keep in mind also as an interviewer, this is actually a good time to get talent because some places are bailing out, and then the places that have the cash on hand can hire. It's a good time to
Right.
get talent, but don't be overly unfair to the candidates either, and try and make sure you restructure your interview in such a way that it maps to the fact that you're not always going to be able to handle body cues or social cues, especially if you're
Joe,
doing it over the phone and not that was the big one. It was, they didn't have video chat set up at all, so this
but
was fully over the phone.
Joe, can I ask a question on that, just
Yeah.
to sort of expand? Do you think that that's, when you say that, I'll say this as a statement, but it's meant as a question, right? It's meant
Yeah.
as a discussion topic. It strikes me when you say that those people are not good at interviewing in the first place, and they've been getting away with it just by sort of like skating through on the, well, I'm thin slicing that your in-person body language, whereas now they're actually forced to not suck at what they're doing.
No, and I agree. And I think that's again, and that some companies who are still able to fiscally hire right now are going to find out that they're not necessarily technically capable of hiring right now, because
Yeah.
their own interviewers are just a little too spoiled, a little too used to getting their way. And so it's something to watch out for, kind of again on the talent acquisition side, not just on the trying to get a job side.
Well, I'm going to speak for the hiring managers out there, which is, I think a lot of people don't understand the various different steps that happen within a job search process and a recruiting process. There's going to be the sourcer, Gesundheit, the sourcer who's going
Thanks.
to find you. There's the recruiter who's going to screen you. And then there's the hiring manager. And the hiring manager actually has other titles. Their titles are program manager or, overall manager. So being a manager hiring manager is a very small portion of their job. And there isn't training internally from the HR, the recruiting department, to tell these people who do another job 90% of the time, oh, by the way, when you do that 10% of the time to hire somebody, we're going to give you this training on how to do it. And,
Yeah.
I think a lot of candidates don't understand that there are so many different steps. I know when I worked at World Wildlife Fund and I was hiring people, this was well before I was in the recruiting industry. I had a very specific style, which basically called me a bitch. And I had a basic style that said I had very high standards. And yes, I'm sorry, I didn't know if I was allowed to swear.
Oh, no. You can swear all you want. I'm clutching my own pearls for somebody calling your style bitchy.
Well, I have very high standards, and someone came to an interview to be, our administrative assistant, and they thought they were being pro World Wildlife Fund, and they showed up in a fur hat and a fur coat. And I was like, I don't understand where you thought this was okay. And I had no filter. So, HR probably would have thrown me out when they heard what I said to this person. So,
Yeah.
sometimes I think it's actually good to know that this person asks ambiguous questions. You then understand if this is the person that you're going to work for, you understand their style, and if that works for you or don't, then you
Exactly.
have a clear indication. So I think that that's one of, no matter
Intruders?
sorry, it's my job to keep an eye on my 90-year-old neighbor, and something's going on in her driveway. Okay, she's okay. Okay. Anyway,
well, there's one thing that I didn't want to cut you off, Kathleen, but I have
go ahead.
Unfortunately, I could talk to you guys for hours. I have like 10 minutes before I have to put my kid to bed because whatever.
Sorry.
No. It's
That's way more important than us.
perfectly fine. I really wanted to do that, and I've been, for some reason, this was like a meeting heavy day. But so what I want to get, and I'll start with Wolf. What are some things that potential candidates can be doing to kind of keep their skills sharp, especially those that already kind of struggled with social cues, with being comfortable in front of people to begin with, and the only practice that they may have ever gotten was going to an office and being at their current job. So now you have working from home, which is a very different animal for a lot of people. I've been doing it for almost a decade, and I still learn new stuff about it. So now you're thrown into this. You're thrown into, as Mike mentioned earlier, your amygdala getting hijacked. What are some things, and I'll ask for answers from all four of you, that people, whether you're like that or not, can be doing to kind of keep themselves sharp?
Sure. So I'll start on the social side. I think it's a key point that, you know, some organizations are much better at interviewing virtually and remotely, much better at onboarding virtually and remotely. And I know my experience hiring on a Duo was that way. A lot of our interviews were, you know, hop in front of a camera, which was great. Back to my joke earlier, but very serious. I put my camera in my car and I was good because I'm used to talking in my car. And I think I did all right in those interviews. So point one is set up a camera and just talk and record. I think a lot of people aren't really aware of what their stage presence is. And much like selfies, love them or hate them, have improved our ability to photograph. You want proof, search for photos in the late 1800s. I'm sorry, late 1900s, early 20th century. Oh, we were terrible. We were ugly as a society until people got the selfie and realized what they look like. Throw up a camera and talk and kind of get a handle of what you look like. That's on the social side. On the technical side, there's some great stuff out there right now. There's plenty of people who are putting out free training, which is great. So hit the Twitters, or, you know, I'm sure ping any of us on this call, and we can point you to some free resources. I noticed that a lot of them, like O'Reilly and Manning, now are putting forth training that you actually put a package together, you build something, and it becomes a work product that you can show on GitHub. So please do that. Build stuff, learn stuff. We are in this brief moment of time where it's very easy to panic and watch Netflix and eat Ben and Jerry's. And I know because yesterday I panicked. I watched Netflix and I ate Ben and Jerry's. But
Fair.
we're in the brief period of time where we have some time. So learn what you look like on camera, learn what you sound like, but also start building those technical skills, sharpening those skills, because there's a lot of people out there right now who recognize we're all going through and have opened up awesome resources.
100%. Mike, what do you think?
Yeah, so I actually have a million. I have a million directions I could go with my ADV brain, but so everything that Will said plus one on that. The one thing, we should do another one of these on how to do interviewing remotely, because that's
100%.
a whole other conversation, right?
Yeah.
We should do it. We should do a few of these. Yeah, and I'm down to be here just to hang out with these awesome people and hear their wisdom. But I want to jump on something that Will said, and it meshes with something that I heard the great one of my favorite public speakers of all time is Tom Peters. He wrote a bunch of business books. I see a couple of nods, and most people in our world don't know who Tom is, but Tom Peters is one of the best public speakers I've ever seen. And I actually got to see him in a small room one time, and people were asking him questions about how to become a great speaker. And one of the things he said was that somebody said something about him being an extrovert, and he said, "Are you kidding? The people who are usually best at speaking to a room or speaking to a blank screen are the people who are the worst at a cocktail party." And in some ways, this is actually a benefit to those of us. So if anybody knows me in person, I'm super shy by nature. I've worked really hard to learn to talk to you all in person, but I'm way better just sitting behind a computer. This is my dream. I literally can talk to a blank screen and not actually have to interact a lot of the time. And I can let my introverted self out in a way that I can't do when I have to go to a room full of people. You know, and walk from group to group, like when I see you guys all at DEF CON or at RSA or whatever. Like this format, I think, works a lot better for some of us in this industry who are not necessarily good at the face-to-face, person-to-person interaction that you know you learned when you were supposed to be cool in high school, and I was definitely not cool in high school, right? And so for me, I think to Will's point, if you practice a little, you might find you like this. I do. I find I'm so much better with a podcast or just a video camera than I am at a dinner party. and it did take a little bit of practice, but it's worth the practice. And I think a lot of our of the introverted folks in our industry might find that this is actually a format that they thrive in. I mean, Danny, you're a good example. Like, you kill at this like streaming, this whole like sitting behind a camera thing, and that's you open up that gift, and the whole world sees it. And I think that hopefully out of this time, maybe there's 5 or 6 more people that turn into that, and we expand the content in our industry, and we all benefit from this. So I'm hopeful about this time.
And by the way, I'm sooner rather than later. Yeah, we're gonna do that next one or a couple of these.
Yeah.
Because I can't. That actually was the original, I think, concept for what Joe brought up to me, was like how to interview remotely. But I think that's a logical next step to, like, let's talk about it first and then go on to interviewing. So I can't wait for that. Real quick, I have like 5 minutes for both Joe and Kathleen. Joe, tips for people that are trying to prepare for this.
So if you have friends, if you have contacts who have done, even not hiring manager, just any interviews for their current company, see if they can set aside an hour and just run you through a mock interview, like via remote, because we're all remote. Like, just being able to do a proper mock interview with someone who's professionally done one before is huge. If they're a hiring manager, even better, because they'll run you through the interview and then they'll talk you through kind of what went right, what went wrong. So that's huge. The other one, trying to be quick, is try and do 1 or 2 actual real professional ones. Maybe not don't start with your first choice, and don't get discouraged. The first full loop interview you've done in 3 to 5 years is gonna suck.
It's gonna hurt.
It's gonna hurt.
It's gonna hurt real bad.
Yeah, don't do your first choice first.
It's hurting me just thinking about it.
Yeah, and if it goes sideways, like I mentioned with the ambiguous question, is I didn't take it personally, especially now when everyone's still figuring everything out. Don't take it personally. The hiring manager might be looking for something different than what you are, and definitely do keep in mind to what you mess up, but learn from it, grow from it. Don't get discouraged.
You just like anything else. Just real quick for me, and then Kathleen, I'm going to close out with you. Is just like when I was going through regular interview loops, I took last time I got laid off, I took so many interviews, even ones that I knew that I probably wasn't going to get, for the reps. Like repetition, and you'll get your swing back. It's just like anything else that you have to dust off after a while. Don't get discouraged. Take your beatings, man. Take your licks, learn from them, and I guarantee it's going to get better the more that you do them. Now, my soapbox is
Danny,
done.
can I jump?
Yeah, go
Can I
ahead.
jump in for a sec?
You're taking my time.
No, hang on. Just to say something to Joe. So I've done 3 of those this week for friends. Most people know how to find me on Twitter. If people want to do fake interviews and want me to beat them up, just send me a note. I'm happy to do that.
Hurt me.
Just let me know.
I'll do it too. I'll beat the crap out of people to make them get better. All right, Kathleen.
So realize that part of this journey is a lot of people have been giving the control to the recruiter and the hiring manager and the company, and then they've been placing the blame. And I can tell you, in 20 years of doing recruitment marketing, I can say that 80% of the blame is on the candidate. And I know that's not going to make me popular. However, I can't tell you, I've got thousands of emails of people coming to me saying, find me a job. And I'm not a headhunter. I am a person that says, what are you good at? What do you want to do? What is your passion? That is what you should be taking this time for. Finding out what your passion is. Find out what problems you want to solve. What are you good at? What is going to make you excited to work someplace? Don't just take a job because it's a next title, or it's going to offer you remote work, or it's going to give you a bump in pay. Make sure that it is something that is going to drive your passion. And before you go on your job search, you better find out what your passion is first.
100%. If nothing else, this last 10 minutes of all the advice, I think, was completely worth it. I want to thank, and sorry I have to cut this short, but like, I can't believe we've been talking for like 50 minutes already. I want to thank Mike as always, dude. Like, I can't wait till all this is over so I can see you. All of you.
Ditto.
Mike, Wolf, dude, thanks so much. Wolf has been a big help to me. Gave me a lot of books to read, which I still have to get to. So Mike and Wolf both.
Ooh,
What's that?
Wolf, what book should I read? Give me a quick one.
Range. Read the book Range.
I saw that. I haven't read it yet. All right, done.
Yeah, read that.
Okay,
Kath-
but the next time we do this, let's do a little bit of Pancakes Con, definitely with attribution to pancakes. But we all have to bring a skill that is a non-technical skill.
Awesome. Well, as soon as I get off and put my kid to bed, I'm going to be scheduling with all of you, so don't worry about it.
Okay.
Kathleen, thank you so much. Joe, dude, I love you to death, and I'm going to miss you not being around. But you know, we're always on Slack. So.
Yep.
Yes, Joe, Mike, Wolf, Kathleen, thank you so much for being here. We'll definitely have another one very soon, because what else are we all doing? And for now, guys can follow me on Twitter at the Khaki, and I will post this up and the long-term one, and I hope everybody learned something from this, and we'll see you very, very soon. Thank you, everybody.
Bye,
everyone.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Cheers.